Are you here for the meeting? Well, come on!
No! No! Some call me the Dark One, others the Lord of Death. To most, I am Dracula.
Okay, obviously we're dealing with a little bit more than just narcissism here.
Now, let's eat.
We're going to go ahead and move on to another piece of vampire-themed content, and that is my review for Renfield, chat. The latest vampire movie that just came out right now. And again, for those that don't know, the general premise of the film, the movie follows the character of Renfield, who is the familiar. We have often seen a lot of, Dracula adaptations and material. Here, it's a kind of a modern day tale. He kind of finds a new lease on life in modern day New Orleans, where he falls in love with a woman, a traffic cop, and decides to finally stand up to his creator, Dracula, played by Nicolas Cage, in hopes of finally breaking free of his servitude. Before going into the review itself, chat, for Renfield, just kind of want to talk about the vampire movies in general. It's a subgenre that has had various levels of success with the vampire mythos, for decades, chat, for a century. You, of course, have, your classics like, Nosferatu, Dracula, 1931 with Bela Lugosi, and, your more genre-bending films like Blade and Near Dark, which incorporate, like superhero antics and Western sensibilities, respectively. And you also have your fair share of failures. I mean, listen, there's a lot of great vampire movies out there, chat, but there's a lot of, mistakes that have been made within the genre, like Twilight, like Blood Rain, like Dracula 2000, you name it. We've been getting vampire movies really since the 1920s, I want to say. Well, with like Nosferatu, when that came out, like 1922, early 20s, right? And even though the subgenre, has entries that range from amazing to awful, it's a horror genre that isn't going away anytime soon, and has proven to be extremely resilient. And some of my favorite horror films are vampire movies. Should I just mention? Hey, love Near Dark, The Lost Boys, great movie. And then some other ones like Interview with the Vampire is so good, and Blade, of course. As I've always liked to say, the grandfather of the modern day superhero film. It is also an amazing vampire movie. All right, dozens upon dozens, hundreds of vampire movies over the years. And also comedies, too. A lot of great vampire comedies out there. What We Do in the Shadows, both the film and also the TV series, by Taika Waititi. With Renfield, I was very curious about the movie, especially, with Nicolas Cage cast as Dracula. Who he plays one of the most iconic movie monsters of all time. That in itself, I think gets a lot of people just interested in the film, both whether you're a film fan or a Nicolas Cage fan, that just like, okay, I gotta see this just to see Nicolas Cage as this iconic horror character. But also, chat, I gotta say, I've always really liked Nicholas Hoult. He's an extremely versatile actor. And has had, he has numerous great roles. I mean, most recently in The Menu, one of my favorite movies of last year, chat. He was fantastic in The Favorite. I mean, Mad Max Fury Road. And even as Beast in the X-Men movies, even though those movies themselves are very much a mixed bag, he was always consistently good as Hank McCoy as Beast. So I was like, oh, yeah. Nicholas Holt's a great actor. And most recently as Peter the Third in, I believe, the Great chat. Really good in that show as well, at least of what I've seen of it. Plus just speaking of the director, I really enjoyed like Chris McKay's like last big, theatrical release blockbuster film, the Lego Batman movie. I think that's probably like my favorite of the Lego films, at least the ones that I've seen. Really, really enjoy it. Actually, I wish they kept that going, sadly. I like all these things, like, wow, this is just like a nice recipe for like a fun, character-driven horror comedy. But, again, you just don't know if the trailers, they're selling you the general premise. It looks like a lot of fun, but at the same time, it's like, hey, we'll see. They really lean into the comedy, and again, comedy is very subjective. What I like, you may not like, and and vice versa. However, thankfully, the best part of this movie is Nicolas Cage as Dracula and Nicholas Hoult, the Knicks, if you will, chat, as Renfield. As the trailers indicated, this toxic relationship of theirs is funny and also just really fascinating and kind of also sometimes tragic. You just follow their constant back and forth, their rapport. And it's absolutely fantastic just to watch. It's the most interesting aspect of the movie. It's like, yeah, you get the threats of physical violence. You sometimes get acts of physical violence in the film between these two people. But it's funny. It's this weird tightrope of funny and tragic emotional abuse that Cage just consistently levels at Hoult that really, I think, keeps you engaged, at least in the first third of the movie. At least initially, and the way in which they just kind of like also just show off their respective powers while also engaging in this back and forth, I think is really good. Like I just feel like there was a lot of thought put into these two, and Cage is definitely bringing his sensibilities as an actor in there. He knows when to be over the top, knows when to be Nicolas Cage. And that all works from his personality, even down to the production design is interesting. I really just like their appearances because they're very much opposite of each other. With Nicolas Cage's Dracula, he's very ostentatious. He's wearing all the regal clothings and everything. The silks, the blacks, the reds. He's got his top hat and all that. He has this makeup. His teeth are very overdone, very point. Apparently, even Nicolas Cage filed down his teeth in order to put in the dentures and things. I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. And Renfield's the complete opposite. For Holt's character, his look is he just looks like a browbeaten, schlubby, although handsome, just office worker. Like those guys that just clock in to their day job, work from 9 to 5, but really it's 7:30 to maybe 6:30, 7 at night, and they go home and they're just miserable. That's what it is. And they both do a fantastic job. They are the absolute best thing about the movie, and I love it when they're on screen because that's when the movie is at its best. It is at its full potential. It's full power, if you will. He won't grow to full power, right? However, the big problem with the film is that a lot of that plot line is just kind of dropped, and we instead focus, and I guess I was just unaware of this going in, And I know that other people have been bringing this up. I haven't really even seen any reviews for this movie. But we instead focus on this cartel mob story that feature cartel mob. I don't know. They call it they have a weird name. It's a dumb name, like the Lobos or something. The Los Lobos. I don't know. And it features both Awkwafina, Ben Schwartz, and a number of character actors. Some you recognize, some you don't. That entire storyline just kind of dominates the next 2/3 of the movie. And I think it really takes away from the thing that was working, which again was with Cage and Hoult. They are so good. Why would you move away from that? But they do. Awkwafina, who I listen. I know she's been in controversy because of the way in which she's played some roles. Chad, I mean, what was the thing that she got in trouble for? Her black scent, right? Other than that, I actually like her as an actor. She's in one of my favorite movies from a few years ago. I think it was in 2019, the year 2019, chat. Oh, what was that movie called? It was the one where she went back to China, and it was about her grandmother. It's about her grandmother has cancer or some disease, but no one wants to know. No one wants to tell the grandmother that she's actually sick. And there's The Farewell, that I think is her absolute best role. People are hey, dismissive of her, she plays the same character. Check her out in The Farewell. She does a great job. Such a heartfelt movie. Every time I see the movie, I get watery-eyed. Her performance is great. And she's been other things that I do like. However, in this movie, she plays this kind of straight-nosed cop, or in this case, I guess like a traffic cop. And the thing about her is her just none of even her general personality doesn't even shine through. Her character is just so underwritten, so uninteresting. She's pretty much playing the same sidekick role that she played in Shang-Chi, except she's just not even nearly as funny as she was in that movie, at least maybe initially, especially in the first half of that film, which I do think is quite good. In the next half, not so much. And they didn't know what to fucking do with her at that point. Like here, she's just kind of dull. And I don't know, I just feel like, man, I don't know if she was just told not to improv. It just feels like so much for her dialogue, it really, really needed like a significant punch up. And like her, I don't know, it's like the opposite, like, because she and Hoult, you know, have a rapport in the movie, but it's not nearly as good as it is between Hoult and like Nicolas Cage. I don't know, I didn't feel a lot of chemistry, you know, between the two of them. The thing is, though, Chad, she's by far, you know, she's not the worst thing in the movie. That goes to Ben Schwartz, who, I've seen him in a number of things. Most recently, I think for a lot of people know him as the voice of Sonic in the Sonic film series right now, both Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. And I'm sure he'll voice the character for the time being when they make Sonic 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and all the Paramount spin-off shows. Ben Schwartz's character is just annoying. He's irritating as all hell. You know, even though like Renfield as a character, he's pathetic. He's a pathetic person. The thing about him is though, you sympathize with him because of his horrible, toxic, but also very amusing relationship with Dracula. There's a charm to him, right? And you're like, I'm in this guy's corner. Schwartz is just playing someone who is excruciatingly incompetent. And just everything he says is just smarmy with like no charm like behind it at all. It's just like these kind of off the cuff remarks. And I'd be like, just shut up so we can move on to the next scene. And again, everything with this mob cartel storyline, it's just undercooked. There's nothing about it that's really interesting. It's like any generic, I don't know, it just feels like those comedies where you have, you know, it's like a buddy cop comedy, or it's like, oh, it becomes a buddy cop comedy, but then there's like this criminal element they got to deal with, and it's just never thoroughly developed or all that interesting. It's like it's very much an afterthought. Something like, I don't know, like Stuber. Remember Stuber, chat? The one where they had Kumail Nanjiani and Batista. It's just, I don't know, just the sensibilities. It just reminded me of something like that. Those kind of generic action comedies, and really, it's just, I guess it's kind of just there to set up action scenes in the film. I guess that's the other thing too. It's like I was very mixed on the action. I mean, it's a very bloody, quote unquote, movie, but it's not. They use some practical effects. There's a lot of CGI blood, and I feel like it's very much a stylistic choice. And I've never really been into it. Like that kind of blood, it was like in an infamous movie where they had, there was like some movie called like Ninja something. I'm trying to remember what it was, but where they had like all this CGI blood. And every time I just see CGI blood, I was like, I just don't really care for this. You know, it's not aesthetically, I don't find it very pleasing. I like squibs. I like, you know, stuff that, you know, uses, you know, like, hey, buckets of real blood and corn syrup and stuff like that. Just something more visceral, something there's more realism, you know, to it. And here they use a lot of like the CGI stuff. It's like, I don't really care for that all that much. It doesn't really appeal to me. It's frustrating too, because that so much of those things, so much of the negative aspects of this film just dominate the next 2/3. But even those, you know, those 2/3, they still have the moments where you have Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage going at each other, and that's fun. But it's not enough. It's just not nearly enough, especially when that was kind of the central premise in the first third of the movie. You know, again, this premise is quite good, but I think it literally just gets its legs kicked out from under it by an unnecessary and just very intrusive and very domineering B storyline that feels like this is the most important story now. It's like, no, I'm seeing this movie for Dracula and Renfield and their relationship, not this other shit that's just, which is literally you can find in so many other just kind of action comedy buddy movies. It's just so generic. And it also just has these very underdeveloped side characters with, Awkwafina. And especially Ben Schwartz, who I do think is terrible in the movie. He's just so annoying. Him and everybody else, and the leader of the Lobos, or whatever the hell they're called. Yeah, it was too bad, because I was initially like really enjoying the film, chat, but man, they dropped the ball. And again, it's not Nicholas Holt's fault, and it's not Nicolas Cage's fault. They are consistently great in the movie, and they're fun to follow, but it's everything else about it that's just not working. It's just this, this B storyline just takes over. I just wish they didn't do it. So yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, it's at least on the double toasted scale as a rating, I'd give it like a high rental. I gave it like a high rental, chat, and initially I was like, oh wow, this is like a high matinee. It's bordering on low full price right now. When I first saw it, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. But man, there is a switch over, and you feel it immediately. And it just keeps going that way. So, yeah, high rental for me. Which I know, listen, I know a lot of people might be disappointed to hear that. I'm disappointed to tell you that, chat, because I was looking forward to this movie. I thought this might have been like, hey, kind of, because, again, there's a lot of great, horror comedies out there. With vampires, I say, what we do, and this is What We Do in the Shadows. It had the potential. It's definitely borrowing from What We Do in the Shadows. And it had the potential to be, like, on that same level, or kind of near it. But they just, they become generic. It becomes generic, for the majority of the rest of the movie. And it's just too bad, because I wish this could be up there with like great horror comedies like Shaun of the Dead, or Tucker and Dale versus Evil, or Cabin in the Woods, or so many others. But it doesn't reach those heights, chat. Those are my thoughts, my opinions on the film. What about you guys? What did you think about Renfield? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Did you have some of the same issues that I did? But did you appreciate it for Nicholas Hoult, Nicolas Cage, who, again, are very good in the movie? Let me know. I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and I wanted to take the time to tell you about the movie of the week, a film that I really enjoy and one that I think you will too. This week's movie is the John Wick trilogy. Just in time for the release of John Wick Chapter 4, the trilogy stars Keanu Reeves and follows a legendary hitman who is forced out of retirement to seek revenge against the men who killed his dog, a final gift from his recently deceased wife. If anyone is interested in purchasing this fantastic film series, please make use of the Amazon affiliate link below in the video description. Your purchase of the film not only earns me a helpful commission, but any purchase you may make after clicking the link itself for 24 hours would help earn me additional commissions as well. Doesn't matter if it's a Blu-ray, a video game, a pair of socks, or a washing machine. Everything within 24 hours of that click can really help the channel. So go ahead and check out the film, enjoy browsing, and enjoy shopping.